lovely bit of the old sunshine out there. That's about the last we can see of it for this week. That's first and last. So we have a contentious guitar. Now you think, what do you mean? What on earth could be contentious about a Squier? Bits in my eye, dust. Yeah, what could be contentious about a Squier in candy apple red sort of colour? A Squier Affinity with a CBS style headstock. You know, a pretty decent Squier. I mean, it's a Strat, and how could it be bettered? It's a great Strat. Look at it. Squier Affinities. Nice. As are Squier Bullets, and as are Squier Standard Series, the older ones, and as are Squier Classic Vibes and whatnot. So what have we got? Well, we've got, I don't know, maybe a second-hand market now you might pay 125, 150 quid for a Squier Affinity in nice condition. And this one, apart from one or two very slight dings, it's all round good condition. It's got a little bit of sort of cream aging on the knobs and whatnot. And so the story of this is that John brought this across local to me, so he didn't come through to me via watching my stuff on YouTube. He just looked up in Google for a guitar fixer type person and found me nearby. So he came over, and my take on this guitar was, well, look, give it one of my full setups and it'll be fantastic. And so we were sort of about to launch on that, and then I could see that he was not keen to spend money, but what he wanted to do was make it just right for him, and that was very important. That it was, he was starting off a kind of learning to play journey, or perhaps getting back into playing, but learning to play again, and he wanted the guitar he started with to be as good as it could possibly be. And so the first sort of discussion was, we had this old arm on here, which was, I got some plumber's PTFE tape, and it was still clonking. And I said, well, do you know what? For sort of 30 quid or so, you could get a Wilkinson bridge that would probably be a drop-in for that, and you'd get yourself a nice push-in arm, and all would be wonderful. So, well, okay, we thought about that, and then as we thought about that, he said, well, what about the pickups? What would you do with them? And I said, well, to be honest, they're actually pretty good sounding pickups. I said, but personally, I like to have a humbucker in the bridge, so we discussed that a little bit, and then he said, go on, stick me something nice in the bridge pocket. So we got something nice in the bridge pocket. And then we had already agreed Tusq nut, Tusq string trees. For some reason they haven't delivered mine, so I'm only got the black ones at the moment, but I'll put them on until the white ones arrive, which should be soon. If not, I'll have to rush and buy some. And then when all was said and done, we came down to, oh, but look, that mint green colour with the candy apple is a traditionally beautiful colour. Oh, go on then. This is all coming from John, not from me. And then he wanted some tuner upgrades. So by this time, obviously, my customer had decided that he wanted this thing to hit the road running, to be as nice as a guitar can be for him to start playing. Now, I know what happens when I do a video like this. Immediately people say, you have got 200, 230, actually, 120, 220, 250, 250, 270, £270 worth of stuff there, plus a setup. Why? You could have bought a Mexican Strat with it. Well, you know what? If you'd have bought a Mexican Strat, you would have got a guitar which needed just the same amount of work on it, and so you'd end up with a nicely set up Mexican Strat. If you were going to sell it onwards, fine, you might get your 400 quid or something back for maybe 350 quid for a nice second-hand, well set up Mexican Strat. But this isn't going to be sold on. This is for keeps and learning to play on. So I guess it's the way it is. People will make comments and say, you should have not done the work, you should have told him that he should have bought, and so on and so on and so on. And it does go on and on, I'm afraid. So I forgot to do something which was right, my steps here. But anyway, I think I remember what they were. Anyway, so yeah, that's inevitably going to happen. Now I've got a challenge now because I've got another customer coming over at 10 tonight to pick up some guitars that have already been done, and I've only got till then to do this, and I'm hoping to finish it tonight, but I have given myself a fair bit of extra work, switching the whole of this over, loading it up onto there, switching out the fitting in the humbucker, wiring it in, yada yada and so on, and it's also a different polarity, so I've got to make sure it's in phase and all of that stuff, and switch everything out. So I've got to do all of that as well as a full setup within the 3 hours. So I'm going to just try and probably dive straight in, and I've sort of figured out the way I do it. So the first thing, what did I say I was going to do? Oh no! The first thing I said I was going to do was I was going to do the nut first, right? So let's just get straight into that. So before, although the fun part is, or it's appealing, the idea of getting all the hardware and stuff fitted in because it's all lovely and shiny, I'm going to take care of the fiddly things first, which will be the nut. Then I'll set the action. I shall swap out. Will I do anything with these? I suppose I better fit the Tusq string trees, even though they're the wrong colour ones, but I'll fit them anyway just to be kind of on target. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by fitting the correct nut, and then I'm going to set an overall the correct action, and I'm just going to have to like zoom on through, and it'll probably make sense as I go along the order in which I'm doing things. So obviously one thing I want to do before I do the fret leveling, which will be early in this setup or this process, one thing I want to do is set the tremolo to full down, or flat on the deck, which we're going to set it up as down only anyway when the job's done. I checked my notes and I didn't have anything specific about that, but I think for a beginner, down only would be a smarter move than fully floating with all its various action implications. Okay, so just as we go, I'm going to get this, and I'm going to now these I'm not going to change, although I bought new that thing tremolo and arm and block and so forth bridge. I'm not going to change the claw, there's no need to, it's just a functional thing, it does what it does perfectly well. Okay, so now we're flat on the deck, that's that bit taken care of for a minute. So in order to get the strings out of the way, I'm going to get my thingy. So the issue about tuners, I was very clear with John that tuners themselves have no impact on tuning stability, funnily enough. They make a difference in terms of the feel and precision of the... Why is this one here? Oh, that's because there's no more room. There's no slack on this. They've been put on with a kink in them. So not a good stringing approach. So I'm just going to hold these out of the way like so. Right, so my first thing I want to do is just squeeze out, tap out, push out, bang out, off order, the nut. Damn. Let's get my trusty screwdrivers that might help me with this, and then the trusty hammer. Whew. So my good lady wife is up in Scotland at the moment. She got there safely yesterday, and she spent the day with her grandchildren. Well, I say her grandchildren, our grandchildren, but on her side of the family, if you get what I mean. They're my step grandchildren. Now, just looking to get this to move. Now, it's being a bit difficult. You can see it start to move, but it feels quite tightly. Now, I can go and do things like get me a Dremel blade in there. I'll see if I can just encourage it to come out this way. And you can see it's pretty tight fitting. It doesn't want to go. Now, always with this, and I've got to be careful, because what you don't want to have happen is that as you pull it out, it yanks out a great chunk of wood. So the plastic is not very cooperative. I'm going to keep that little bit here as a reference for thickness. As you can see, it's not going to want to come out in one piece. So the thing about this is to get that's not so bad. Get a little bite on the plastic to get it to give up the grip. So it's been glued and it's broken where it's glued. That's okay. We'll just scrape those bits out. I'm keeping that because I can use it to measure the absolute thickness that I want the replacement to be. Because getting the new nut in and thickness to the correct thickness is always the slightly challenging part of things. Now, when you take out the old nut, there's usually going to be some glue in there, and part of the challenge will be to remove any excess glue. It's quite tricky to do this and to keep everything flat. So a good flat knife works pretty well as a Hosco nut file like this. So I'm just going to run this back and forth a few times to see if we can make sure it's as smooth as we can make it. Now, what will happen with this, because it's a flat slot, we're going to use the nut complete with its middle foot thing on it, and that's going to stand in the middle. So if it was a curved one, we take off the little tab thing, but if it's a flat slot, we use this as a support in the middle. Now that happens to be, I hate when they do this, that happens to be pretty much straight on the ball, although there's still some grime in the middle there, which I really don't want to have to scrape away. But getting a flat slot is a very, very tricky thing. It's much harder than you would think. If anything comes up and comes out of the slot on either side, which I think it has done a little bit on this side here, then you've obviously then got a little bit of a drop off, and that can be quite difficult to overcome. So that feels to me like it's seated pretty well. Now the nut itself is a fair bit wider than we need it to be, so obviously I'm going to sorry, microphone. I'm going to tailor down the ends. So what I'm going to do now, it's actually fractionally looser than I'd like it to be, but that's there's nothing we can do about that. It's not loose so that it moves at all, but it's not quite as reassuringly snug as I would want. But that, nothing you can do about that when it comes straight out of the packet, and it's just something about the Affinity Strat nut slot in this case that happens to be a tiny bit wider than we'd want. You can sometimes, I mean, I've bulked out the nut in the front to back direction by putting a little bit of copper tape on it, actually, either on the back, just to sort of bulk it out and pin it down a little bit, and that's one way of doing it. So I'm going to throw this broken nut away because I don't need it as a reference, since the width is already set, if you like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the strings back on. I'm going to sort of line it up and then see what the action is like. Make calculations on how much we need to remove to get it to where we want it to be. And what I'll do at the same time before we take anything off is I'm going to amend the action at the thingy end, this end as well. Okay, that's pretty tight spacing, but it's actually not bad. It's good. It's well balanced down here, but we do have, obviously it's wider. It starts out wider than we need. Now I'm going to get my tremolo's flat on the deck, which we know already. That's good. Now I'm going to get a hex key and a string height guide, and I'm going to check what we've got. I would say it's 2.5, so we're quite high. So I'm going to start by putting this down to my target action. Now what I'm seeing straight away is that the on this bridge, which may change slightly on the other one, but on this bridge the grub screws are sitting out quite high. High. Oh, this is about 2. Oh, we've okay, that was in the tremolo spring type of thing, which we don't need anymore. So this, we're 1/2 mil too high, so I'm going to go the wrong way. Fool. I'm going to undo this a whole and then a half. We should be down to 1 point. So 1.5 should be a good target for this. Just over. Let's go to there. Okay, and then the others I'll just do quickly by eye reference, and then we'll just double check them in a minute. So the idea about this is I'm going to set the action where I want it to begin with, and then we're going to work from there on and do the setup with the 3 main components of the action in place. So the 3 main components will be the first fret action, the last fret action, which is set by the bridge. First fret is set by the nut, last fret is set by the bridge. There we go. And that's pretty close. And then the third, I should do it the other way around. The first one is the neck relief, and the first one neck relief, second one first fret action, third one last fret action, and then we're all in order. Now when you do that, what you'll probably find then is that the action that you've chosen, this nice low action, you probably find that it won't play properly. It'll be too low, there'll be buzzes suddenly getting in the way. But the nice part is that's when fret leveling comes into play. So I can do this retuning with no worries about the tremolo, because I've screwed the springs in so far that this is now stuck in, if you like, flat down on the deck. So okay, so now we've got to check and adjust the relief. Well, the relief looks actually pretty good. Now the first fret action is too high, so we're going to have to do our work on that. But let's just get a quick look at what the the excess is. So I reckon this is probably running at about 0.7. That's not a bad guess. Could well be 0.8. Call it 0.9, so 43729. So it's going to be 8, isn't it? Just to make me, I was quite right the first time. 0.8, between 0.7 and 8. Yeah, 0.8. Okay, we're going to call it 0.8, so I'm going to make a mental written note of this. So 0.8 is the first fret action on both sides, and we know that that is 0.5 too high, so we've got to take off a minus, we're going to remove minus 0.5 mils from this. Now this is kind of interesting because we can't do the normal measuring thing, and the reason for that is that this is a 3-point thing we're going to have to sand back. So we're going to have to do it and try it again. So it's a little bit of a touch and go thing. Now, is that strictly true? Is there a way we could do it? The problem is we're only touching at 3 spots. The very end, which is a hard one to measure. The middle, let's see if we can get a meaningful reading at this point. So if we're reading right at the end, we want it right there, and oh lordy, well, we want a reference measurement, that's all we want. So just on the inside of there, we've got 399. Let's try it. I'm going to draw it out as usual. This time it's got a foot in the middle. There's my thing, and I'm going to go right there, 399, and I'm going to go slap in the middle of the two of the foot, and we've got 513, and then at this end, as close as we can get to that end as well, which isn't going to be easy. 4.15. So if we take a 0.5 off each of those, this one will come down to 4.6 target. This one will come down to 4.6 with that 4.63. No. Hang on a minute. That's down to 3 point. Wait a minute. 4.15 minus 5 is 3.5. 3.65. See, my maths is so terrible. 3.65. 7. 11, 15. Yeah. I mean, I'm terrible sometimes. This one, 399 minus is 349. Okay, so those would be my 3 target measurements. And to get them to where we want to get them, we need to carefully sand down. Now, it's not a great deal of sanding, and we need to do it square to, I don't know how well you can see this, square to the nut has to be square onto here, which is quite difficult to hold in place. So I'm trying to see what's the best way I can do it without it changing, leaning over. Now, it's only, think about it, it's cutting into this, but it's only cutting into these 3 spots, so we've got to be careful that it first of all doesn't lean, which it's tempted to do. Hard to even hold, so we don't want it to lean, and when I'm taking the material off, I want to just very carefully flatten it out. So that looks good. Then we've got to take a measurement at the end of each of these again. So down here we've got 386, which is still some to go. So that's good. Now if I can just keep this thing, which way was it starting to lean? Okay, I'll keep this thing as square on as is possible. Looks okay. And we'll switch to finer stuff afterwards. Now the base end we want 349. We're going to get at the moment 385. This one 389. That's 4 and that's 2. And the middle one, 4, 6, 3, that's coming out as 4. Still looking the same, it can't be. 4, 6, 2. So this is, I would say this is a difficult way to do this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to now concentrate on getting this flat on the base more than anything else. So I'm going to very carefully sand this, holding it at a 90-degree angles to the sanding block, so that when it goes back in the slot it's going to sit comfortably. And let's try it in there again. How does it sit? Yep, sits good. Now what I'm going to do, because this is a slightly unusual one, it's not often we do one of these into a curved bottom thing. It's going to make more sense now to finish this off with nut files, because otherwise I could just overcut it very easily and waste all our time. So we're kind of close to it on there. Actually, I mean, this would be okay for starters. It's not that bad. I think we might be about 0.4 or 3 even, 0.4. It's just about on 0.4, but I want 0.3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate on the last little bit and use the nut files just to do two things. First of all, I'm going to make sure the slot is going backwards, and then the next thing I'm going to do is just make sure it's exactly at the 0.5. You get a look at it about there. Sorry about the views. So take off this one, take off this one, concentrate on this. So it would help if I put them in tune, really, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm going to start with a G. We're very close to it. So the G is this one, 0.17, and I'm going to mainly go backwards first, and then almost a quick slice just to make sure it's tilting back. That's very close indeed. So really I'm concentrating on mostly widening, or making sure the slot is wide enough, and taking it down a tiny bit. It's pretty close, but I want, more than anything, I want it tilting backwards. That's the main thing. That's pretty good. Right, next one. This is the 13 one, and again we're close to the, hardly any height worries at all. It's very, very near, but again concentrating on the width of the slot first and the tilting it back. Now, because of the overall lowness of this action, these guitars were not made for it. If you have anything behind the nut, it gets in the way of putting a slope. I think that's good for me. So sometimes to get a slope, a shored slope, you can sometimes clip the back of the piece of rosewood behind there. They just never really anticipated you'd play it with a low action. Isn't that weird? Because what it really means is the strings are so low to the deck here that it can't go backwards without hitting. As soon as you go backwards on a slope, you're bound to hit these things. Anyway, I know what I'm talking about, even if millions don't. So again, more width than anything. Backwards reach, backwards lean, I should say. My swallows peeping away out there, hunting for food and whatever else they do at this time of day. On the mark there. Right, now I take off bottom 3 or bottom 2 and we'll do the D outwards. That one I'd say is pretty much spot on, so I'm not going to worry. Actually, what I'll do, I will run the thing through from a point of view of width. We'll just make sure it's wide enough. Pretty close to. Again, just concentrate on the width part of the thing and we should be good. So I did pretty well with the filing on that, but I think it just became sensible to finish it with the files. I find myself in a situation where I'm wasting another nut for no real sensible reason. Okay, and often the low E is quite a tricky one. It's the thickest of them all, and it tends to want to I can either not cut at all or suddenly cut a lot in one go before you even know what's happened. And yeah, because it's thicker material, you can find yourself cutting away at it and suddenly it goes doink in one big go. Okay. Just. Well, that's not right because it's out of tune. Okay, so that's those main bits, and the next bit I'll have to do is get the width right, which it isn't at the moment. So. Good. Right, having tightened all the strings up, I'm now going to slack them off, or move them off to one side, and I'm going to mark them all up in marker pen. I'm doing it in sort of 2 sides at the moment. And this is preparatory to doing the fret leveling. So now we've got the action at all 3 key parts. The relief is right, the first fret action is now right, preparatory to gluing the new nut in. The last fret action is right, and now that means we can now tackle the frets, and because we've got the action set right, our target playing action, we can then hear and feel when we get to the correct amount of levelness for that action. And this is why I like this method, because it's the only method that does that. Other methods, you level to an arbitrary absolute levelness, usually where your fret rocker doesn't pick up any more clicking noises, which we typically read as showing that our neck is perfectly, well, frets are perfectly level. In fact, that might be true. First of all, it's wasteful, because the truth is you don't need to level the fret underneath your playing action. so that we don't need to level that much. We only need to level to the action we're targeting. And the other reason that the traditional method isn't so good is because although it levels lovely and flat in the neck, strings off, neck relaxed mode, your guitar doesn't get played like that, because what happens is you play it after you put the strings on, and then you put it under tension, and the string loading compresses the neck and bunches the frets up a little bit, but not a hell of a lot, but enough to make them suddenly no longer accurate or no longer flat the way they were when the strings were off. So it's an interesting difference, and it makes enough of a difference to mess up that levelness that you had. Now right now I appear to have lost my what have I done with my, I'll put it up here, my fret leveling bits. That's weird. When did I ever put it up there? My eyeglasses case. Right, so now I'm going to get stuck into the leveling bit. Here we are, sort of zoomed out a bit, and this is sort of the precision part, one of the precision parts of the deal, although it doesn't look massively precise and stuff. What I'm actually doing is I've now got the neck into the target action that I want when it's playing, so it's configured the way I physically want it to work, and now I've got the frets doing whatever they need to do when they're under load, so they are bunched in a slightly uneven way. And now I'm going to use this interesting method to level those slightly bumpy hills and valleys, I call them, level them into as progressive and smooth a curve as possible, so that we can make all the strings and notes we play smoothly. And then after I've leveled it, we can just recrown the frets, and then I can sand and polish the frets out into a nice shiny playing condition. So the first thing that's good about this method is that as I level, kind of not pushing particularly hard at it, just going up and down, side to side slightly and back and forth about an inch at a time, I can then see what I've got, and I can tell you straight away I've got a low spot here and a big low spot here. So that's, our neck is higher, lower, higher, higher, lower, higher at the end. So this low spot here, this one is probably not so low that it will cause any problem. This one here will probably cause choke outs when we bend the strings. Now I haven't tried bending the strings since we've lowered the action and stuff. So let's put everything back in and we'll check the individual notes, and then we'll check the bends. Okay, so the individual notes sound okay, but we're in a low spot from here to here, so we might start, yeah, there we are, choking out. Now that is because we are in a low spot. So the question, or the thing here is, as long as the notes all play in this first track, they're not really, we don't need to continue leveling, because the choke out only happens when we drag that E string across into what I call the G track. So I suggest we just move on and do the B track next, and then on to the G, and we'll assess whether leveling the G track frees up any of those notes. The thing about a low fret on your guitar fingerboard is it's the low fret that dictates what you can do almost more than the high fret. So low frets and groups of low frets, believe it or not, are more common than individual single standout high frets, which is kind of weird. So again, we're showing in the B track, we're showing low here, not too bad there. Fizzy. Yeah, so the low, in truth, when you're manufacturer gives you a low fret, or when actually probably less the manufacturer, more the organic nature of what happens when you compress the neck, because the wood, nobody can predict that. That's good. It's freed up most, or a couple of those already. So let's just leave the B where it is, and let's go into the G. Oh, no, hang on. Let's recalibrate and go into the G. And then this is where I'm going to listen out for whether we have any success freeing up the those high note bends. Now, an absolute way of freeing that up is to raise the playing action at this end, at the bridge end. But of course, we don't. That sort of defeats our object straight away. We don't want to default to doing that. The idea is we want to, as far as we can, we want to level that, level the problems into submission, if we can. So again, we're going to obviously probably still have the same unevenness down here, and it's going to be around this G track that we need to average out the highs and the lows here if we want those notes to play. So it's going to be a case of now listening to this and try again and see. And we do it really, the idea will be to level until I don't want to level any more metal, and if I am at the point where I think we're going to just have to expend more metal than I'm comfortable with, then I will probably raise the action 1/4 of a mil down here, in which case it'll clear it probably. It's actually getting there. Let's do the D as well, and then let's do them all, and we'll come back to that area and we'll re-examine the action, reassess it, and decide what we do. So this is as you're seeing now, you're seeing an issue that most fret leveling techniques won't deal with. So we're using a fret leveling technique to help us overcome the problem of a slough or a valley of low frets and the impact they have. And the impact they're having is they're just basically there because the fretted note is being fretted in the kind of trough of the valley. The note has to climb higher, and it gets cancelled out or choked out by the string, the frets in the path of the G track, that part of the fret. So it's quite difficult to explain, but it's the geometry of the radius along with the consequence of the organic way the neck is compressing, or bunching under compression I should say. So just really going to look to see what we can do with freeing up these bends. You know, I mean, on the plus side, we're talking advanced here in the sense that all the notes play. You know, we've got a guitar, we've got incredibly low action already now. All the notes play. What we're just trying to do is get these notes freed up, and the low patch here is definitely getting in the way. So we can continue to attack it. Now I'm going to just carry on and go through, and then I'll come back and focus again on this low spot and its effect, its impact on the high E bends, because it's usually the high E bends that the ones that you're worried about when you bend a big note and they choke out as they go across the radius. So, you know, as a setter upper, you know, you can be fairly sure that somebody will want that ability, and of course if it won't allow us to do it, then we have to compromise in one of the variables, one or more actually, but we have to know what we're what we're compromising and why. Now, by the time I get to the wound string tracks, or the low E and the A tracks, we're dealing with strings that are wound and considerably thicker in their size, so they behave differently, they spin differently, and as a result, if you're playing with a very low action, they will easily end up striking the strings and causing what I call fret slap, which is a buzz that tends to accompany all the notes in great chunks, half or even more of the fretboard. It's pretty good. A little bit here now because we're in that gap, that ditch. So that's on the A string, that's the consequence of that ditch, is a little bit of fret slap picking up right where we expect it to be. And the only thing I can really do with that is I'm going to just concentrate on working the banana tool in that area, because the only way you really eke it out or alleviate it is to rebalance, kind of meet halfway between the ditch and the peaks either side, or the high frets either side. So you're kind of evening out, you're averaging it out. And of course, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that that's ultimately going to be expensive in fret metal if you do a lot of it. So you have to kind of decide your stop point, and I'm afraid there's no science behind that. It's a feel thing and an experience thing. So it really is absolutely one of the joys of using this method that you can expect to unlock after years of using it, but it won't, you won't get it necessarily beforehand. It's not something you can just start off knowing how to do. As with any tool that you build up a proficiency in. So now I'm on the low E edge, and I'm kind of observing the way it cuts, probably expecting to see the low valley reveal itself again on this part of the radius, and there it is there. It's a bit smaller now, but it's definitely a low spot right there on the low E side of things, but that's okay. So all the way across, the use of this tool has affirmed what we can tell by playing, which is there is a low part. There are a couple of low spots, but there's a significant one there from the way that it affects the fret point of view, or the way it affects the strings. So all the notes play. It's incredibly low action. Now we've got to concentrate on the So we're getting into the ditch about 14 and 15 is choking out as we get across into this area here, and that's because this area is we're coming from down the bottom of a hill, coming up a hill, holding the string in the middle of the G track, and then it's coming down again to the anchor point down here across some curves of the radius, which means it runs out of space where it wouldn't normally do, and that is such a tiny amount that it's just crazy. So I'm just going to recalibrate the high E track, see what I'm working with. Yeah, that's good. It may have been a little bit under curve to begin with, so I'm just going to zip over these three again, and then I'm going to look at it from the action point of view. So at this point in time, I'm pretty happy with everything else. I just know that the low spot at this part of the neck is just what's limiting me a bit. Now, when I say limiting, I'm being extreme. What I mean by limiting really is it's the worst thing that's going to happen is it's going to demand that I compromise a tiny bit on the last fret action. So it's not at the end of the world, but we sort of the whole game of leveling is to try and avoid, you know, raising the action so that the guitar will play. I mean, that's the sort of default way that we've grown up with as we were kids. We had no choice. That's until we knew how to set guitars up, that's what we were stuck with. So, but now this is the beauty of this, is we should be able to tell the guitar or tell the frets to conform with the action that we've chosen, not us having to live with the action that the frets permit. So now this is the area on the G track again that I'm just going to spend my final bit of time. Now I say final bit so you can tell that I've already decided that I don't want to do any more leveling of this area after this. Now in a way the damage, if you like, has been taken by the last few frets at that point, which is okay because, you know, a lot of people have put a what they call a fall away into their fret boards anyway, so you could say, well, it's doing a little bit of that, but my experience tells me that's as good as much as I want to do in terms of leveling. Now I'm going to reassess how well it plays or doesn't. So I'll also do at this point, before I do my final bendings, let's just double check the action here. Okay, for a start, that is a little low, so I'll give myself a break and I'll do half a turn inwards of the grub screws. I want 1.2 and that's about 1.25. Well, it was 1.25. That's broken at the top there. Oh, where was it broken? Broken, the balls come unwound. Oh well, crappy string there. And two double strung, so now I'm not going to be critical and say that John's dad tied a knot in these strings at the tuner, but I don't like it when people do that. Right, now I'm a string down. I'm going to be okay with that. Now, what I mean by that is I've leveled as much as I'm going to want to go on the E track. Everything plays. I've set now the action to exactly where I think it will play. So I think we'll get away. So I'm going to, sort of blind, I'm going to call that good on the leveling. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to now take these strings off and throw them away. And then after that I'm going to recrown the frets, and then there's a bit of an off-camera business of polishing and sanding, which is kind of boring and noisy, so I'll do that off camera and then come back to do more of the exciting bits, which is yeah, these are sort of looped around, these things locked off a bit, which isn't a way I like to do them, especially it's sort of, I get the idea of why, but it actually it makes it really, they're fed through and it makes it quite difficult to take them off. And that's broken straight off, that one. Yeah, we can run the risk of either scratching myself, I run the risk of scratching myself, or in having to pull and yank these things, we run the risk of scratching things, which isn't good. So here we go. You can see there's plenty of dust built up on here, and that's all good. So let's chuck away these strings now because they've done their service. And so, I mean, we are going to take a load of stuff off here, so we don't need anything else on here for a minute. So let's do a crazy lightning dismantle before I go into the fingerboard polishing and re-crowning business. So out come the original string trees. In fact, we're going to just basically tear this whole thing down now into its component parts, because just about everything, just about everything is coming off. Wow, we're loose already. And these got little pokey holes. Yes, they've got two little seating holes. It's not a problem if the HipShot ones just cover those over, I think. I'm going to put the HipShot ones on with a retaining plate, which means they don't have to put in new screws. It's very neat, actually. So I'm going to take all these bits off, because from the point of once I've sanded and polished the frets, then it's all really about reconstructing it with all the good stuff. And of course, part of that is going to, we can see in a minute, before I go off camera to do the polishing, I can show you the bridge changeover, which with luck should just be a straight drop in, as they say in inverted commas. But again, we can sort of assess that right now in a minute now. So let's get a screwdriver. Place this down on here. Sorry about the view. I can't see what you're seeing. Now I can. Better. So out will come all of this. Now I've got to wire up. I'm going to take the pick guard completely away, obviously, to change it, and I've got to wire up the new pickup. So I might as well separate this from, or will separate it from the jack socket, so I can remove it all in one go, and then we'll reconnect the jack socket at a separate later moment. There's me little screws. Yep. They're a bit rusty, so I'll see if I got some newer ones to go in there. Okay, so here's our is there anything still left? Oh, there we go. Wouldn't come up. It's got some shielding paint in there already. So just to move things along, I'm going to take off the ground wire there, and I'm going to snip off the earth wire here and the hot wire. What was that one? I don't know what that one is. Oh right, that was silly me. This was the truth is, I'm going to change all this over. What am I going to end up doing? I'm going to end up rewiring the entire thing. I'm trying to avoid doing that. I mean, it's not the world's longest drawn out thing to rewire a Strat, to be quite honest. I think I'd rather just snip this down from this end and pull it through for the time being. There's our starter for 10. Chuck it over there. Now I'm going to pull off the springs at the back with a thingy. There it is. So we've got 3 springs on there doing the business. Again, they're pretty good springs. There's nothing about them necessarily that has to be replaced. And then we can remove these. Now, even if these look good, they're a little bit rusty in places. Even if they look good, I'm going to go with the new ones, because they will be exactly sized for the new bridge. And while I'm here, of course, I can give all this a good clean up. Now, those in the know, this business of shielding in here. Okay, this has been moved in the past. That's interesting. So I don't know if John's dad was the architect of that. This shielding won't really do anything because it's not grounded to anything, so it has to be, I can do some more on there and we'll ground it off while I'm at it. But if I don't finish it tonight, that's fine, I can finish it tomorrow. But I was hoping to do it tonight. So we've got, somebody spilt something on here, so that's why we've got a kind of sticky mess under the scratch plate. It's quite common that happens actually. People spill a cup of tea and it takes a bit of elbow grease later on to get rid of the muck. But this sort of car polishing paste is good. You can use a naphtha first. I'm running a bit low on that, so I thought I'll just go straight with the car polish first, if I can lift all this off. As you can see, it does come off, but it's just grime from something that's fallen in there in the past and got stuck. So yeah, so this has got filled in holes, so it's been realigned, or I'm not sure why someone would have done it, because that's not exactly an upgrade tremolo, so who knows why. It's one of those mysteries we shall probably never solve. In the meantimes, I'm just kind of getting rid of the bulk of the grime. Most of this you can't see anyway, so it's not that critical, but once we're there, I do like to clean things up if possible, especially if it's sort of baked on grime and grit. Yeah, so I mean it's well, is it grounded? Maybe some of it's grounded. There's a little grounded tab over here. I'm not sure I would be 100% confident in it. I tend to rely on a grounding wire and a fairly fat contact area. Sticky stuff. Anyway, so yeah, a little sort of detour, diversion while we get this bit cleaned up. And afterwards, once we've kind of put this back together again, we can always do the rest of further out into the body with this stuff. It's quite a nice refresher polish. I'm running now short. I've got to get an order in for fresh cloths for this sort of final polishing thing. But anyway, you can see that it's much cleaner under there than it was. Right, so let's just, I wanted to check before we go off camera. What I wanted to check now was, do the holes here line up, and will it be commensurate with? Yeah, I think that'll be a good fit. Hurrah. Okay, whoops. So what I guess I will just do now is let's go back a pace and do the recrowning of the fingerboard. So partly, along with leveling the frets, what I've also done will be to remove some of the fret wear down at the nut end, because you tend to get grooves with a guitar that's been played a lot, or as you know, anything that's not young anymore. So as we come to we get to recrown the frets now, and then once I've done that, I will mask off the whole of the fingerboard, and we'll get the whole of the all of the frets polished and sanded and polished. Okay, so now I'm going to use the fret crowning tool, and this should be pretty quick because actually I haven't really taken that much in the way of material. So there'll be a couple of little aerials where we spend a bit more time, but mostly we'll probably just whiz through like so. And course, in the lower areas, it'll hardly have touched the frets, if at all, so we won't linger on those at all. This one's had a bit taken, so it's one of the high ones in the series, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the middle and this far section of the fret. And onwards. So once this is done, the polishing out bit is a sort of, you know, it's just labour work, which is a bit boring, so I tend to put on something on the radio or listen to some podcast or YouTube things, but the precision bit's done now, because when we reassemble this guitar and put it under load with the set of strings, what you'll find is that the neck will go back into the bunched up configuration that we had it when we did the leveling, and so the relative levelness will reset itself. Now I'm hardly touching these now because they're in the dip, if you remember, and I don't want to take them any further down. So now we're coming out of the dip, so I'll do a little bit more leveling on that one and this one. So it's kind of reaffirming what we know, is that there is a dip right there, and then these last two have been hit a bit harder. That's the final two sticking up at a normal or slightly high aspect, but they're tameable. Okay, so that's the recrowning part of the deal. So from this point onwards, I'll go off camera for a minute. I'm going to tape all of this off, sand it all out, and then I shall come back when that's done and we're ready to start reassembling the various bits and pieces. So hold fire. Okay, well, I've run out of time, but I've got the new pickup in, new plate on, everything back in, wired up, frets polished out, tuners to fit, plate to fit on the back, and strings and thingy those. But I've got to go because I've got to meet somebody back at home, another customer, and Andy, and hand over Andy's guitars. So I will complete this tomorrow, but we'll at least put some of the pictures of the work ongoing. Obviously I did the electrics and stuff off camera, but new bridge in place. So we're close to being finished, just a little bit behind schedule. Okay, I will see you finishing this tomorrow. And there we are. Everything as it was yesterday, except tuners are on. Ta-da! And so now it's time to light the music. It's time to light the lights. No, put on music, light the lights. Muppet Show tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to oil the fingerboard. Now yesterday when I did the wiring up, I had to test to see whether the new Seymour Duncan pickup was or wasn't in phase with the original two Squiers, and somebody here who's probably done very similar upgrade just yesterday will go, yeah, they are. But I don't know, so I had to do the test, which involves taking a resistance reading whilst whilst lifting up a ferrous screwdriver away from the pickup magnets and seeing whether the resistance dips up or down at the point you do it. And that's something I didn't see before, is a little dent on the fingerboard there, but it's not a big deal. So according to that, according to my experiment, they were by definition, or by default, they were out of phase with each other, so they required that I put them in phase, which meant wiring up the new one slightly differently from normal. Anyway, so the slight annoyance about that is, of course, I will only get to test that when we string it up and plug it in. And if it's wrong, then I have to take the strings off and do it again, or quickly. Take the strings off, take the plate off, wire up 3 wires differently, and there we go. Anyway, so let me just first of all get the new strings in. It's funny that it's very, I can't hear this. I tried in the past, I've tried testing the polarity with a whatchamacallit, tuning fork, but I really can't honestly say that I hear the thing I hear enough of a difference when it's just a tuning fork. Somehow it has to be all the strings on to be able to hear the difference. Anyway, it's not a big deal. It's just you have to rewire. Basically, to get it back in phase, you have to change on one of your pickups, or the one that you just added. That's, if it's out of phase, you then have to go in and swap around what was, to begin with, what was you had as the positive, the wire going to the positive, the input of the switch, and you swap it out with the wire you were using as the ground, and you basically change them around, which is not difficult to do. One of the things you have to do is remember not to put the two that you were using as ground together and solder them together, which is quite common to do. When you're not thinking about it, you put, in this case it was the green and the bare wire, and you sort of tempted to want to put them together. And of course it means you've got to take them both off and strip them apart if you need to change which of your wires is the hot and which is the ground. But one of them still, the bare one still has to be the ground, whatever you do with the other one. So I'm just looking at these locking tuners. I'm hoping they're going all the way through. We'll get to the high E and C. High E and C. Right, so what I'm going to do, and this is, John, my little note to you. Because you've got locking tuners on, I recommend you do the following when you tune. So make sure, first of all, the ball is up into the base of the, well, into the block. Then, even though you've got locking tuners on, right, I would say pull back about centimetres worth of string before you lock it off with the locking thing. Okay, now that seems, to some people seems counterproductive, but locking tuners hold strings in place by virtue of the fact that they crush the string. And of course, if you crush your string, you partly nearly break it. So if you nearly break it and you pull the string all the way through, what it follows is, if for some reason you should have to slack the strings off again, you don't really, when you come to tighten it up the second time, it's very common that the string breaks at that point because it's already half crushed and it doesn't like being wound or tightened. In fact, it often doesn't even like being unwound. So if you give it that extra centimetre to go round the post like I'm doing here, if we have to take the strings off to make a change, for example, to the polarity of the pickups, if I didn't get it right when I wired it up, then at least in these strings we've got one chance to slack them off. That's weird, isn't it? The pickup, I've technically put the pickup in upside down, but I don't think it makes any difference. Well, it's funny because the wire came out. I put it out above because there wasn't enough space. I think that's fine. I'll double check anyway because we may have to take the plate off if we get an out of phase situation. So I'm building in that extra bit of slackening. I'm just trying to think, maybe what I should do now before I do any more strings up, let me just test out the phase issue. that way we'll know, and if I do need to do a change over the wires, I can realign, reposition the pickup as well, which is a bit annoying. And we're not doing any splits, so there isn't really any particular reason for it to be one way or another. Clean one. Volumes. Okay, I would say that that's in phase, which is good. Can I live with myself with this back to front? Do you know what? I probably can't, just because it's upside down, even though it doesn't make any difference. So now look at this. I happen to have some spare wire available to me, so that I can take these strings off, do them back up without any risk of it breaking. Isn't that lucky? Ooh. Silly, silly. Okay. Off you go. Out of the way. Just go over there, would you? Something like that. Right, so now I'm into boring. This is a tight, well, not a tight fit exactly, but it's not the loosest thing in the world, so we will have to be something or other. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. That's slightly too big. We have to be nimble going in there to change the pickup around. It might be straightforward, but we don't have a lot of room, and I've cable tied some of it together. Anyway, so that's good about the phase of the pickup. So my test worked. Had a fun evening already today. I've done a modification on a Gordon Smith that frightened the life out of me, but I've done it. Well, I'm halfway through doing it. So the bit that frightened me was routing the fingerboard of this, I'll show you in a minute, of this old Gordon Smith. So up comes this thing. Now what we don't have is a lot of leeway. That goes to there, that goes to there. Yeah, we might just get it out. Hold it, hold it. Okay. Oh, that was a shame. That really was handy, putting it in that way up. Let's see if we can just switch it around without there being any. No, we can't. We're gonna have to undo a couple of the cable ties, and I guess we'll probably stand by with a couple more to do them back up, so we don't get untidy. You see, things you can't predict. Things you get wrong after a million times of doing things. There we are, something like that. Okay, so that one needs to be snipped, as with this one also, if I can get there. Okay, so I want this to come up that way round, like so. That's about right. Question is how easily it will go back into place. Doesn't that look all so simple? Now what I'm going to have to do, straight after this, I'm going to clean wash my hands again. So this now is struggling to fit in here. Let's try it. Ooh, yes, no, yeah, yeah, that's good. Ooh, I can live with that. Of course, we'll try it again at the end just to make sure in that bit of moving around, nothing went for a walk. Like we didn't break any individual wires or anything. So let me just... One of the things about fitting this is I notice we've got to be very careful to keep the pick guard away from the bridge. So it was sort of important how I tacked it down just now. Okie dokie. Very easy to get caught out with screws on pick guards, which is why I've learned to hold the screw up these days until it's almost all the way in, because if you start from tall, it's so easy for your screwdriver bit to slip off and hit the finish. So I've had that happen more than a couple of times in the past. So nowadays I won't do this without holding on to it. To make sure nothing can fall down. Alrighty, so I'll just carry on because I'm going to wash my hands because now they got grubby. So just bear with me. Sorry about this. Better than editing, right? So a quick scrub. You don't want to have filthy hands. The reason your hands get dirty when you just take the cover off and do a bit of moving things around like the pickup there is because inside the cavity has got all of that shielding paint, and so it does have a propensity to come off, not too much, but it comes off, and it also comes off on the wires that you've just sort of fitted in there. So it's yeah, you have to be careful that you get mucky and clean up again immediately after. Right, okay, so now I go back to here. I've got my already fitted once string. Let's just put this down here, something like that. I haven't got white Tusq string trays at the moment, but I've got some coming tomorrow, so I'll leave these unfitted because I've basically taken the widened the holes to fit them in when they come, so that will be no problem. Right, so now to preserve or to not run any risk of breaking string, I have fed it through. This time I have fed the crimped string out the other side, so it's safely out of the way, and it's not getting in the way. It's not, or the weak bit is passed through the tuner post and out the other side. Couldn't do that if we didn't sort of build in that extra little bit of wire. But some people would say, you don't need that, you've got locking tuners. But that's why we needed it for this. Now, this bridge is new one on, so I haven't set this action at all, so it's going to be a bit of action work down at this end. Now, we've gone for string trees, and at the same time, these tuners are, as it happens, staggered. Although I wasn't totally convinced anyway that they what's the word? I wasn't totally convinced that they always work, so having string trees is still good, but anyway, so we're going to see if the staggering alone works, but I'm still going to fit the string tree since it's already got the holes. Okay, now we can get through with the lowest posts in the stagger, which is good. That string tricked me there, so I'm going to end up going around a bit more than I need on this one. Anyway, it's not the end of the world. The ball didn't come up. A comment on one of my videos today was interesting, and the person said, I really like the way at the end of this video you gave the tremolo some real serious dive bombing. 6 screw tremolo they were talking about on a Strat, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to fit these black ones for the time being, and I'll swap them out at home and bring the black ones back to the workshop. Yeah, so the commenter person said, you know, it's great, well done for doing that, because we really got to see or hear the fact that it stays in tune, which is of course something that you don't normally see. You have to take people's word for it. Anyway, so let's just see, what am I doing? I am going to fit the string trees. That's got a funny, it's stuck slightly. Hey, caramba! Anyway, come on, in you go. So what's on the cards tomorrow? Well, tomorrow is Gavin's Squier S7. Interesting beast. It's a Strat-like guitar from Squier, which is a company I've not seen their guitars up close and personal before until today, and had a chance to have a look at it, which was interesting. And it seems very good quality all round. It's not a cheap guitar in that it's sort of retails around the just under the £400 mark, so that's not dirt cheap like. So it has me sort of thinking, well, what is its standout feature if it's not really cheap, or if it's not in the cheap zone? You know, what's going to make it stand out as a Strat? Why would it be interesting? And I'm hoping, I don't know yet until I put it on the bench, but I'm sort of hoping already that it's going to be the frets. That's my fingers crossed anyway. So I'm just going to gently bed the strings on first, and then I'm going to go, since it's a new bridge and saddle, I'm going to go back and set the playing action. So this obviously will then stay where it is. There's an extra layer, this is a bit grubby at the moment, but there's an extra layer of cellophane on there which can be taken off to make it really nice and clean. Now, at this point in time, what I'm just mainly worried about is the positioning. So I think I'll get the other thing. So I want 1.5 on this side, so that's miles high. Now the question is, have we got enough downward movement? I pray that we do. We should have. Let's go right low. Let's go right low. I think we might break down on its haunches. Okay, we have 1.7. I'm going to get my Grandpappy glasses. Make sure I can see. Right, so at this point I'm thinking to myself, if I can't get this any lower, what do I do? Well, what I do is I have to push up the neck with a shim. Now in some ways, a bit of pain in the arms to do that right now, having got all the way to the end. Okay, this is bang on 1.5. I think that will do actually, thankfully. So what I'm going to do, while we're at it, is I'm going to crank everything else down to meet this low one, and then go over it again once they're sort of in the area, in the neighbourhood. So a shim is something that you definitely can use to correct a situation where the strings are too... What am I talking about? Yes, so for example, if you can't get down low enough with your saddles, then you have to bring the neck up a bit. So that's why you would use one. Let's just get these into position. Not really intonated or anything just yet. Oh no, please don't tell me. Do not strip that. You better not have had done. I think a horrible feeling it might have done. Son of a... What's going on here? Right, this one is not obeying me. Thank you. Sit down. Well, you're told. You sit down. You sit down. I am hoping that the one that I'm worried about has not stripped its, what do you call it? I think it has, you know. That is crap. Look at that. Oh my God, is that terrible? Well, worst comes to worst, we'll just have to change out the saddles. That's just poor. What did I just do with it? I put it there. Right, let's go back to the box of parts, which I took home yesterday. Oh, brilliant. Let's find another bridge. What's this one? That's got some nice bits. Is that 52.5? I'm going to... This is a screw-in arm, which I don't like, so I will use these if necessary. Oh, there you go. That's another on and off with the strings yet again to fix this. 52.5. Ay, caramba. Right, so I'm just going to try something. I'm going to see if these some of these grub screws here are a better gauge fit. We'll just see if they are. I'll just change the screws if I can do it. Let's just try. I can just hold them in place. You know when it feels like you've run late and there's no grip at all, and you know why that is. It's because these bent vintage saddles have got such a thin point of contact that if they strip, even it doesn't take any time at all to strip, whereas the other ones are blocks, so that there's tons of grip space. These things will strip at a moment's notice. So now I'm going to remove these saddles and change them out for these saddles. Let's get rid of this tremolo arm. It's a nice block. It's a Music Lily brass block on here. And much as I like the block, I don't like the screw-in arm. Right, so what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to take a whole set of saddles and springs and screws together. And yes, once again, thankfully, I've got that little bit of final leeway on the strings, which I will have to use to take off and change over the saddles, because it's the last set of 9s I've got as well. Aye, aye, aye. Just a little extra distraction I could do without. Yeah, I should have thought of that before. Those bent steel saddles are, the thinner they are, the more vulnerable they are to exactly what just happened, which is really slightly distressing because now it's going to cost me more time. Let's get this out. Done. So yeah, there's me thinking, oh, ready to go home any minute now. And no such luck. This one had a bit too much wound on. Okay, so off they all come. Again with another crimp point nicely attached. So what I'm going to do now is remove all of these biters here. Stay. And we'll just dump these, never to be used again. Wrong. You and you. Now you can see, or you can probably tell, this is now a most fiddlesome operation that I could jolly well do without. That's good. Can we just have a? No, that's not too bad. Right, I don't need that on just yet. Let's put my regular glasses on so I'm comfortable for this particular task. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off this one here, down to the end, bin it over here, and put on the first of the replacement ones, which means the thing goes through here, spring, saddle. But the saddle has to go over the string, or the string goes through the saddle, should we say. And that comes down to there. And then I've got to mate up the two bits. So, and then we'll bring it all the way down as far as we can. Like so. First one done. Second one. Note to self. I like the bridge block, I like the plate, I like the push-in arm. I don't like the bent steel saddles. Get out my way, all of you. So through the back, new thingy. Thankfully I've got loads of spares like this, and the chances are, because of the screw-in arm, I was not going to use. I tried, in fact I did have that Music Lily bridge that I've stolen these saddles from. I did have it on another guitar, one that I made, but you know, as I say, I just couldn't live with that push-in, that screw-in arm, so I swapped it out for a better one. Out, out, please. Oh man, fiddly. Come along. Out, you lot, come in. I've measured these, they should be right at 52.5 mils. Should be the right size. Either that or I've completely missed the point, and I'll find out the hard way in a minute. So this is typical guitar setup fun, where you think you're on the home stretch, and then it all goes belly up. That's this is the first time that this problem, it's not the first time it's occurred, but it's the first time I've seen it and understood why it occurred like the way it did. So, because other times I just think, oh, I've messed up, and I've caused it to strip or whatever, and then I come up, change them all out, but not make the connection. And actually, the connection here is bleeding manufacturing, or the way they've made that. What do they call it? Rolled steel, rolled saddle, which is actually a bit crap. Rolled steel saddles. There's no good reason for them being that way. Anyway, so we've got a pickup the right way round now. We've got our, hopefully our bridge recovered from this less than ideal saddle edge, and we shall hopefully be on the homeward stretch, homeward bound on the home stretch. Put this one through here. Come on, please, come on. No, I'm not teetering on the brink of insanity or anything like that. Oh, come on, do me a favour. This is a really tricky thing. It's so easy for this to strip. Final countdown. Hurrah. The last of the crappy ones are off. Yeah, it was a challenging thing, because on the Gordon Smith, somebody in the past, before the current owner, somebody has, we think, refretted this guitar and massacred the fretboard edge, such that the whole neck cinches in towards the centre, which is a pretty undesirable thing. And as a result, the way they've then fretted it is that there's not enough material in the frets to actually for there to be enough playing room. So if you try to sort of fix it, the option is that you could what could you do? You could swap the nut and saddle out for a narrower spread of strings, and hope to get the playing width back that way. Or what I've opted to do with this one is to route a slot down each side, fit in some fresh rosewood, and shape it back flush with the fingerboard. Now, I had hoped that maybe the shape, or maybe the misshapenness, the over beveling, well, there's two problems. One is there's an over bevel, so somebody's literally beveled the fingerboard, which you never do in refretting. obviously you bevel the fret ends, but this person has put in a bevel on the fingerboard before you even get to beveling the frets, so that it's cut in a whole chunk of the playable space. And I was hoping that it would just be that, but unfortunately they have also, in the process of whatever they did, they've also literally thinned down the whole of the neck into a bit of an hourglass or sand time, egg timer thing, you know what I mean. So you can't really, unless we strip the whole neck down, we can't really rebuild the neck. I mean, we could do, it's possible, but as it stands at the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a strip of rosewood either side. So I've routed down a little ledge on either side. Got a strip of rosewood, will go in, glue it in and clamp, and then we'll shape and scrape that back. And the one thing that will allow me to do is regain the centimetre, no, I wish, regain the millimetre or so lost, maybe 3/4 of a mil either side, lost from the playing area of the fret, and that will give it us back. And then combined with refretting over that new slightly extended fingerboard, we will still obviously have the cinched shape of the neck, where it kind of squeezes in the middle, which is not ideal. Right, so you can see we're back where I started with a minute ago, and I'm now going to do, with hopefully no major kerfuffles, is I've now got a end of a thing that's worn that. I'm going to take this down to our target action. Now this may be presenting me with more trouble, because if these are taller blocks, we may not get to the action without doing a shim, but I'm hoping we will. Two. We might just get to the deck. Now the slight problem with this is, without a shim, we don't get. We have all the saddles sticking up. It's nothing bad. In other words, it'll play, but really we would ideally not want them sticking up. The alternative then is to put a shim on the neck, which I think I'll now do, just because we're going to bloody well do this thing properly. So I will put a shim on, and put the shim on, and then be able to not have the saddle so far down, because we'll bring the shim up. Sorry, we'll bring the neck up to meet the strings, so we don't have to lower them down. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to put a capo across there just to hold the strings in place. Then quickly off to one side, I'm going to make myself a bit of sticky stuff to go on the shim. Hope I've made enough. So this little shim, I use these all the time. This is a 1/4 of a mil brass shim, and it tends to be just about enough for any neck lift that I need. The alternative as well, or an alternative if we want, is to also, you can buy a set of shorter grub screws. So I'm just going to check this fits in there. That fits in there. So now what I'm going to do is going to find the right bit, and we're going to take the neck off. Look at this. I hope you can see. Long screwdriver bit. We'll come back for another one. Where's the other one gone? There it is. So the shimming part of things is quite normal. It's what you have to do when the factory hasn't quite got the geometry right. And the truth is, it may have got it right for players of a certain era who were happy with it the way it came out of the factory. But in the case of my situation, where most of my customers want a lower action, then there's nothing to do other than to shim it to allow them to have that action. So to get this done, it's a bit of a fiddle, so I'm going to take off the screws, hold the neck together while I do it, putting them in the same order they came off in, turn it round like so, hoik the neck up. Please, come on, thank you. Grab my shim, just pop that out the side there, look for my blade. What's that got written on it? August some year or other. So my shim is going to, got a sticky bit there, and I'm going to put the shim right at the back of the neck pocket, and it hopefully will just avoid the holes. In this case it does, without doing any further work, and that's the shim in place. And now what I do is I encourage this back in, stand it up, make sure it's fitted in properly, get the thingy plate ready again, get the first one in to hold the plate, sort of, and then we go with the other ones. And then I tend to go across diagonally, so I'll do the two diagonals first. Quite a bit of discussion and argument about shims. There are some people who are certain that the shim creates an air gap in the pocket, albeit very slight, and as a result it somehow stops tone flowing from the guitar to the pickups, which is a bit of a fruity hypothesis that's frankly never borne out to be true, but that's what people like to think. Anyway, Fender used to use a shim system, and that was their micro tilt system, and they seemed to think it was okay. Admittedly, they stopped it after a few years. Don't know why. Don't know why. I feel so blue. Don't know what's come over you. I found someone new. Right, there's me shim added. Now I'm just going to put the strings under a small amount of tension. Not too much, just so I can make adjustments. Now let's have a look at, alright, now that's too low as we'd expect. So let me hoik this up, thank you, to an ideal height. I don't want that too tight. So the first thing will be to get this low E set to a proper height. This is quite nuts. It seems like all of my, that's the wrong size. I think it's the wrong size. It seems like all my hex keys are either worn or refusing to function. That's not right. That ain't right. Is this one? Am I just losing my MIND? It's just not. It's stripping the damn thing. That's better. Gone in further. Holy cripes. Let's use this one then. Okay, let's just get this done. Right, millimeters too high. So this is raised it by, raised the neck up to the strings a bit, so we don't have to have the saddle so far down, but we still have to go down a bit. So it might be worth looking for some of the lower, shorter grub screws. All right, that's our target there. Now I'm just going to try and get all of these down roughly where I want them. I've got a horrible feeling about this. Oh, man. Alright, it's not a problem. They're the same saddles. I just realised there are short screws in this set. I didn't notice it. Oh. And it's the middle one. So I'm going to swap these out now. My brain frazzling. This is really, it's because I think we're near the end, but we aren't. Right, so I'm now going to remove these short ones. I didn't look and see. I thought they were all the same length. I assumed, no, I made an ass of you and me. Now this one's now doesn't want to come out. Thank you. Shorty. Right, this one, a tallie, needs to go in the middle. In the middle, replace with that one. Thank you. This one, tallie. Oh, crying out loud, please. Well, I can see it, I can get it, but it makes me think that I probably could do with getting rid of this one because it's just crappy. So where might I find another one that I can just steal? Bear with me a moment, please. Somewhere like that. No, I care about that one. I care about the joint. No, I don't care about this horrible thing. Right, I may see if I can just replace that. It's definitely a spare, old boy. What are we looking for? No, these are rusty. That's going in the bin. There's no point keeping a rusty spare. Now where would I keep some? Here I would keep some. Here we have some, what do they call them? The rolled metal ones. That's better. You go in there. No, this is a short one supposed to go in there. Oh. Right, that one came out of there. This short one's coming out here. Short one's going back in the end there. Aren't you? Yes. And this tall one is going in there. Borrowed from another place. Fits perfectly. I mean, these are Fender curved ones, but I have to say I would not want to use them for that issue I mentioned just now. Right, short one. I seem to have lost my marbles at the moment. Short one on the end here. Short one. There's the short one over there. I am losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. Short one, right. Long one, out. This one's threaded as well by the looks of it, feels of it. And it's come off its screw as well. Oh my lord. God. Dear Lord, please. Right. Don't want this one on. Now it's stuck to the grub screwdriver thing. Oh my. Right. This is frazzling me. So you need to come off. I've lost that now. It's like rebuilding an airplane engine while the plane flies. It's just ludicrous, really. Right, now I can't get this. Now I can get that one off. Don't like that one. It's coming off. Don't like this one particularly, but I'll use it if I must. off. Tall, short, right, short. It's funny, I've got a hole in the ceiling here, and the cool air is coming in, cool wet damp air is coming in through there. Right, you up there. I now can put in the final two tall ones back in here. We should be ready to reposition everything. Could we almost be heading towards possibly, not like that, we're not. I don't even know what time it is now. It's getting unreasonable, whatever it is. No, that's not going to work. It's not the right end. That's going to work. Yeah, this is not that often that I get frazzled, but you can, as you can probably hear, right now I am somewhat frazzled. Come along. Just about there. Now I'm going to do the other ones in relation to that one. Of course, the problem with these grub screws is you have to do them up at the same time, a little bit either side, because if one goes up high and the other one's still low on the same saddle, then you end up with the thing leaning and it causes stress on the thread and you can get a stripping effect or whatever. So it's just not brilliant. Get there. This got a little ball on the end, doesn't it? I didn't notice that before. Down, 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 you silly person. Down, 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 in, up, down, up. Nearly there. Right, now let's get back to more precise measuring. That's just 1.5. That's a fraction over 1.5. Good. That's pretty good. Hey, hey. Hey, there. 1.5, just over, needs to be a bit lower. Lower. So it's very fiddly, isn't it? Very boring to watch, but it's real life. About right. Fraction low. That's about right. 1.2, and this one's too low. 1.2, 1.1. Right. So that is that. I'm going to throw 2 of these grub screws away because they're non-functioning. What I wanted to check I've never heard it make that noise before. So I'm just going to check the intonation now, but I've got more stretching to do, but I just want to check the intonation first to get an idea on where to set the high E saddle. Too short. Pull it back, slack it off. Try that. Spot on. Right, and now I'm going to just basically, before I go any further, I'm just going to line up all of the rest with this first one. And so just to show you up close, since it's mighty interesting, when you come to intonate, you must trust the pattern, I always say. So you can see the pattern there is always going to be one shortest string, step back, forward a bit, step back. And now I'm going to just basically do that until they're all in that position. So this G has to come back quite a bit, and the step back on each of the, in the section of 3 like this, is about a millimetre. Now the D needs to come back, but it needs to be slightly forward of the G. So here comes the D coming back, and we're going to leave it about there. And the A is going to be a millimetre back from the D, which is going to be about there, and then the low E is going to come back about a millimetre from the A, about there. So that's my basic intonation pattern, which will do me for now while I stretch the strings, and then we'll come back and just check it for one final thing. Whoops, let's get you zoomed out. Right, so sorry about all of those detours. I'm just going to wash off my hands with some solvent just to take the rust from the various components I've been handling in all of that to and froing, get them off my fingertips, and then I can stretch the strings without worrying. Let's see, what do we reckon the time is now? I just got some of that into my wound from earlier on. It's 9:30. Right, so now after all of that, we're in the position where it's all about tuning stability. We've got a Tusq nut, which is, well, let's put it another way. Tuning stability is all about 2 things in equal measures. So think about it, 50% your nut and 50% unreleased slack in your strings, which we're going to squeeze out. So we've taken care of half of it by getting a Tusq nut, getting it to the right height, getting the slots wide enough, and everything running smoothly. So as little friction as possible. And we've also got Tusq string trees as well. So that's 50% of the tuning stability dynamic or equation taken care of. After that, the other half is holding unreleased slack in your strings. So what I'm doing now is, as you can probably see, is I'm gently squeezing out the slack from the strings, and the high E is already tightened up because it's up to pitch. So I'm just going to get these quickly near to pitch. Then I'm going to use my tuning fork to tune them again. Right, so that's the first stretch. So now I'm going to re-stretch. And the idea with this, if you want the guitar to stay and play in tune from here on in, we want to stretch it until it doesn't detune anymore. Now I'm noticing as I pull the tremolo is lifting up. So under string loading, I'm just going to help this along for a minute by pulling this in tighter so that we're decked on the top, because when I come to set it as a down only tremolo, I only want it to go downwards from the start point, which is nearly there. Now okay, so now we're going to go and tune up again. So stretch again across all of them, and it tends to be that the wound strings hold onto the slack more than anything else. So you can see that after all of the fiddling about, we're getting closer to the end game. It's turned out to be longer than I expected, but that's how it goes. Swings and roundabouts, some are quicker and some are longer. How's that sitting? Now, the only thing I was slightly concerned about with this bridge was the way that the holes were sitting. It didn't feel to me like the totally smoothest moving thing I'd ever felt in my life. That's okay. So just having a look at this here now, so that the arm can go quite a long way in. The problem is, if it go all the way in, it's just likely to run into the contact with the volume. So I'm going to do a tiny little bit of a bend adjustment on this, because I think it's just fractionally could do with just a little bit of a hoik upwards, because we want it to go in a fair amount for a good snug fit. There we go. Better. So what we also want to do is, you want me to see it, so I'm not going to try and show it to you, is I want to put the arm in, and then I want to adjust this little holding screw, which is in this thing way down low. Let go. That's about right. Ah, yes. Nice, no rattle, no slop. Okay, we're just about there. Like I say, there's a film, a cellophane film on the scratch plate which you want to take off at your leisure. It's just really, or don't, I mean you can take it off, keep it on there and keep it from getting scratched until it starts to fall off, and then take it off. I think we're good. Might do a tiny bit of adjustment on the back here. I want the tremolo to be as light as possible. It's interesting that sits. Okay, I keep checking on this edge. It's sitting flat on the other end. I keep getting caught out by that. Oh, lovely. Finally, I'm done. I am done. I'm going to put this in its box. Oh, to pull the arm out, you just pull it out. The screw that's in there now is tensioned so that when you next put it in, you should just be able to slide it in, and with a bit of a push it stays in its, retained in its place. It's actually quite high. You can go a bit lower like that. Okie dokie. So to put it in its, or in the case to take it home, ta-da, or take it back to the house. That's it. I'm done. Had enough up here for tonight. I'm going to stop. Thank you for watching. See you soon on another one.